Hello and welcome to the Society with Fatma Shaheen at PTB World. They say that a country's economic future is written by its entrepreneurs. Having said that, today on our show we'll be talking about the impact that Pakistani entrepreneurs have had on not only Pakistan's economy but the society at large too. In this regard, we'll be talking about the latest trends as we do see them evolving in the society over a period of time, more particularly when it comes to entrepreneurship at one end, whereas of course we do appreciate the fact that we now see more and more rural women, being involved in entrepreneurship programs, and by that yardstick, to also transgenders being included too, with them stepping into various, industries. On the other hand, we also observe the fact that unfortunately, still women at least don't get that ideal representation when it comes to entrepreneurship. And to state some statistics, it's very clear that approximately only 1% women are, deemed to be business owners, that too in the entire entrepreneurship landscape. But having said that, when we do talk about, perhaps having greater diversity, having greater inclusion, what is very important then is to talk about this not only from a policy perspective, but also the various initiatives that the Pakistani government has then taken so as to overall have that ideal system and ideal culture to make entrepreneurship more long-term and definitely more sustainable too. What all has the government done in this regard, and what in turn would be the viability and effectiveness of such programs? That is also something upon which we'll be shedding light today. In this regard, we'll also be talking about, how overall we do see basically advancements in technology, or even for that matter, AI impacting the entrepreneurial landscape. And if we are talking about this, that too from a very contemporary perspective, what impact would, very important and pertinent issues like climate change also have on the same too? All of this today, that too with an extremely pertinent panel. Let me introduce you to my today's panel. My first panelist for today's show is Badar Khushnood Saab. He's a digital ecosystem consultant. Assalamu alaikum, sir, and welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. Alongside him, I have Ms. Dada. She is the convener on National Economic Reforms, Central Standing Committee. Assalamu alaikum, Ji, and welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And my third panelist for today's show is Umair Butt, who is a business process expert. Assalamu alaikum, Ji, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me here.
You're most welcome. And now, before we start the discussion on today's topic, let's have a look at this brief report.
Pakistan's entrepreneurial landscape is evolving with exciting initiatives. SECP's Easy File and Asan Karobar program are making business registration faster and simpler, encouraging more people to step into entrepreneurship. AI-driven innovation is opening new doors, helping Pakistani startups scale faster and compete on the global stage. Female entrepreneurs are breaking barriers, moving beyond symbolic roles to lead successful businesses across industries. The digital economy is gaining momentum, and Pakistan is well positioned to become a regional tech powerhouse. With growing support systems, untapped industries like agri-tech, health tech, and renewable energy offer incredible opportunities for the next generation of entrepreneurs. The future looks bright. Pakistan's startups are ready to thrive.
Welcome back from the report. Badar Sahab, I would like to start the conversation with you. Now, we do understand that Pakistan, by and large, has one of the youngest populations in the world, which also translates into the fact that, it has immense youth entrepreneurship potential too. But actually, looking at some stats, we also come across the fact that, unfortunately, only 10% startups practically do succeed. So what reasons would you attribute to, such young youth-led entrepreneurship landscapes failing? And also, if we are to look towards solutions, what are the issues that we are looking at?
I think we need to understand this 10% data. First of all, yes, absolutely. Pakistan is probably the youngest population of this scale on the globe right now.
Right.
And that's a huge opportunity, not only for Pakistan, but for Pakistan to export our talent to the rest of the world. But that talent needs to be sharpened.
Right.
In terms of the success of any startup, actually even 10% is a higher proportion. Generally, it is anywhere between 1 to 5% or even lower at times. So we need to think from a perspective, this is for a tech startup ecosystem, for very high-end, cutting-edge tech startups where venture capital is involved. A normal traditional business has a higher success, of course,
right?
Because there the processes are developed, the systems are known, buyers, sellers, marketplaces, everything is established well already. You just need to start and kick off another ecosystem, and you are just another player in the ecosystem.
Right.
Whereas when you do something which is very cutting edge and where you actually challenge the status quo, that's where the success ratio is lower.
That becomes reduced. Leaving on from where you just left, when we are talking about this from a holistic viewpoint, we should construe this from various angles. Now, we do understand the fact that a lot of times young people, they might want to have their own businesses, but they might not have the ideal resources to do so. They might not have market access. They might not even, for that matter, have access to mentors in this regard too. They would be, very lost that way. So when it comes to looking towards solutions, what are the issues that we are fundamentally looking at so as to overall ensure that, yes, once these young entrepreneurs, they do enter the market, they are there to stay long term?
So the biggest challenge there is, I think we need to revamp our education system. And it's not just Pakistan, everyone has to re-evolve, because what is happening right now is that we are not upgrading when we talk about AI in the technology landscape. It's a complete reset. Everything has to be thought completely from scratch. Our education system was mostly based from an industrial era knowledge economy, but not from a pure knowledge economy perspective. One and two, I think we need to teach kids the modern tools of the trade. How to set up a company, personal finance management, everything which is not part of the curriculum. So I think that's where our Ministry of Education and Higher Education Commission needs to step up and evolve an ever changing adaptation to the landscape.
Right.
I think that's critically important.
And in this regard, definitely industry and academia collaborations,
Absolutely.
those will be very, pertinent too. I'll come towards you, Ms. Sam, and I would want you to add to this further. So when we do talk about entrepreneurship, what is very important to talk about in this regard is also, of course, the fact that at a very basic level, it is then linked with unemployment too. A lot of times, people are pushed or encouraged to become entrepreneurs so as to avoid unemployment. And to some extent, that is also true. But as somebody who has worked in this sector for such a long time, do you feel that just by becoming an entrepreneur by itself, that would be that universal solution so as to do away with issues like unemployment?
Thank you, Fatma. I would like to say, in country like Pakistan, we are facing a lot of political instability and economic instability at the same time. So people at times think specifically, I will more towards my lens will be more towards the gender side. So the female usually think that the more safe side is to do the jobs, so they can have more security. For entrepreneurship, you need to build up your own businesses. And after COVID, there is a whole shift of change. Even our financial institutes, they are giving, now they have changed their setup, because initially they were not understanding that if you're doing online business, that could be part of the formal economy. And you can open up your own accounts and you can go for the loans and all those government things. So there is a shift. And I personally think that entrepreneurship is the beautiful thing, and at the same time we need to give the conducive environment and society and all those things. The complete ecosystem is much needed. However, institutions are working, and this is the only way forward where we can think about the economic stability in near future.
But another way to also look at it would be that, madam, perhaps we need to have that optimum balance between, of course, promoting entrepreneurship as it is and also having skilled professionals in the industry, because any country ideally should strive to have that perfect balance. Coming towards you, I would want you to add to this. So when we do talk about, having one's own startup, and we do talk about having one's own, business to start off with, how easy or how difficult is it for somebody who is then making that switch from having a traditional 9-to-5 job? But are people in Pakistan equipped to do just that, both in terms of their education, this is something upon which Badar Saab very rightly so touched upon, or in terms of their, skills, upskilling?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, Fatma. So entrepreneurship is, there's not a set time or a right time to start or become an entrepreneur or a businessman. So actually it comes with the time, it comes with the need, and people working in 9-to-5 are actually the ones who become a really good entrepreneurs in the future as well. Because I always prefer that it's good to start off from a multinational or from a startup, and then learn the dynamics of the business, and then start something on your own instead of just directly jumping into the business.
Right.
Unless if someone is coming from a family business background, then it's a different story. But if you're doing everything on your own, it's better that you start from a corporate, and then you
make that switch.
Yes, and then you make that switch, and then it should not be a a complete switch, you know, from job to your business. First, it should be a side hustle, and then, you know, you should be spending some extra time, maybe after work or over the weekends. And then once you think that, you know, it's becoming good, it's becoming legit, that's where you should do a
you
complete
make that
shift.
complete transition. Moving a step ahead, when we do talk about this, I think what's very important then to also talk about is the precautionary angle here. So how do you, as somebody again who has been an entrepreneur yourself and also been advising other businesses to, propose can we reduce or mitigate that element of risk, more particularly for younger entrepreneurs?
So that's the basic essential part in a person, you know, who's working a 9 to 5. You know, the risk taking factor is the minimal in that person. So that's where he's scared of shifting completely to that. So my suggestion is always that, you know, you start off from a side hustle, and if you're not able to spend that extra some hours after you work to that side hustle, then you cannot be a businessman or an entrepreneur, because entrepreneurship takes your 24/7 time in the future. So if you're not ready to invest some extra hours after your work, then, you know, you're never ready to start
and
your
it's
own
also,
business.
at least in my opinion, I would want to add, it's also that change of mindset in the long term, because you see, Badar Sahab, you would agree with me on this, that you need to have that very peculiar entrepreneurial mindset, and that goes back to having that resilience in you, that you need to succeed no matter what. So how would you respond to what he just said?
Exactly. So in addition to both of these things, I think another very, very important thing is that the local high net worth individuals or industrialists or businessmen who are already established need to create an ecosystem of risk-friendly capital.
Right.
And that is still missing in Pakistan. Bank loans are not risk-free because someone has to return back those loans. And that's where venture capital comes in. Venture capital ecosystem exactly inculcates the same spirit that you can take a risk, we will support you. Even if you fail, we will accept that failure because you need to keep trying to get to that point of success.
Of course, you're going to make the entire system more enabling and more conducive. When we do talk about this, I think what's very important to talk in this regard is also the very important role of the government. Now, we do see that the government has established the national incubation centers. We also observe the fact that, you know, there's been development of IT parks, and then the Punjab government's Aasan Karobar program too. So when it comes to overall boosting entrepreneurship, more particularly for younger people, even for women, you know, in this regard, how effective do you feel are programs and initiatives like these when it comes to ensuring that, yes, not only do people opt for having their own startups or business, but they're also in a position to sustain these long term?
So NICs, as you mentioned, are really important, and just for general public's awareness, that's National Incubation Centers, which the Ministry of IT set up in different cities. Those NICs at least did one good thing, that they started and kicked off the conversation of entrepreneurship in families, friends, and the society. Because earlier our education system is so accustomed to acquiring jobs. Everyone is seeking jobs but not thinking of creating jobs. And I think NICs have changed that mindset to an extent, and other private incubators and accelerators as well. But all of this cannot happen in silo. So the government policies have to be very, very conducive and supportive, and they cannot be harassing. They have to be facilitating, and that's something where these Aasan Karobar-like initiatives are important, but they need to be propagated properly to the right youth, right at the right place at the right time, and that's where the industry and academia need to come together as well.
Right. And not only that, sir, I think in addition to that, we must also look at this from a regulatory perspective. Now, we do understand the fact that, you know, the SECP has introduced multilingual promoters guide and platform, the aim of which is to simplify business registration and compliance. Sam, coming towards you, when we talk about regulatory mechanisms, how important are programs and initiatives like these important so as to not only encourage people to proactively opt for startups, but also to ensure that, yes, in the event that they do so, it's not a difficult task for them? Because a lot of times we see that people, you know, they back out just because they feel the whole process itself that is very tedious and burdensome.
Yeah, and personally, I think, Fatma, when we were talking earlier about this thing, that there is a industry academia linkages program, and then there is everything has to be in a complete ecosystem. One cannot, one institution or one organization cannot work alone. So here, the regulatory bodies and chambers and financial stakeholders, they should jump in, because they are the bodies which can connect the corporate sector or the youth engagement with the government initiatives, like you mentioned about SECP, regulatory bodies, financial institutions, chambers.
And so many other bureaucratic
Asan
hurdles too.
Karobar, these programs are there, but how a person, a young person can reach and can fulfill all those requirements?
Right.
If-
I think it also goes about creating mass awareness about the same. But taking advantage of the fact, since you're the only female on the panel today, I think here we must talk about the need for there to be perhaps greater women inclusion when it comes to Pakistan's entrepreneurial landscape. Now, we do understand the fact that over a period of time, we have seen more and more women coming up and, of course, starting their own businesses and startups, more particularly rural women too.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we also do know that, female entrepreneurs generally remain to be only 1% of total entrepreneurs. So when it comes to ensuring that we take women along with us, as a woman yourself, what do you feel are the changes that we need to make?
This is the most important thing, that the social barriers are there. I mean, the media is doing its responsibility by creating that awareness. The government is doing their job by introducing new programs, and financial bodies are doing at the same time to giving them the conducive environment and all those things. But at the same time, a woman is always scared from the society barriers, and there are the gender gaps also. So we must understand that these things and these things have to be understood by the social perspective as well. And these things can be changed with the passage of time. There is nothing which can change. Like a couple of years back, it was quite difficult to talk about so many issues which we are talking right now in completely in total independence and on mainstream national media channels. But the thing is, I guess that right now government is also doing their part, and the private sector also understand, and they are giving a lot of opportunities to our women.
Right.
So maybe it will be, the thing is that it will maybe take 5 years,
more
10
time,
years,
right.
and but that system
Change.
that is there, that changes in the air.
Right.
Our department, our organizations, they are working, and now our women also understand, the way you said, in rural areas, our women are very independent. They know their property rights, they know about their crops, they know about their livestock, and now they are trying to get engaged with the tech thing.
Right, Sam. On which I'll come towards you, Badar Saab, and I would want you to add to this. And in this regard, we also see that the government, more particularly the Punjab government, has been very proactive when it comes to economically empowering rural women. So how would you comment on that?
Gee, absolutely. I think these things are very important because now the most important thing is that they have access to information. They have 4G, they have devices, mobiles, and actually the content consumption patterns are completely changing. They now know how to access information, and that's why we see proliferation of so many tools like social media, where people are now consuming content, learning from those. Now they need actual physical support in terms of either capital or raw material, and that's where such initiatives will be helpful.
Right.
But I think technology is playing a key role in helping them get awareness as to what they really need and what they can do with that stuff.
Right, sir. Coming towards you, Umair, I would want you to add to this, but from your own youth, practical perspective. Now, a lot of times we see that people, more particularly young people, would want to invest, but they have these looming concerns of investors' expectations and living up to the same, which in itself would be very legitimate too, because they are the people who are putting the funds into your business. So how do you then propose, can people get those funds from investors, but at the same time be able to, manage their expectations properly? Because investors would want to get a return on their investment as soon as possible. But on the contrary, people who are running that business, they might have concerns that, it might take their business quite a few years to even break even or make profit for that matter. So how do you propose, can people go about having, that ideal balance, especially when raised with such conflicting interests?
That's the most critical part of the business, whether it's bootstrap or whether it's a startup. A cash injection through investors and then being answerable to them is very critical, right? So the good suggestion is that, the founder should be very, very clear from the start, right from their pitch deck. The numbers he is promising should be manageable. It should not be over-promising. Right, and that's what investors need to know. I mean, if you're over-promising them and you're taking that investment, and things go south, then it's really bad, and the business goes down the drain.
But moving on here, I feel another very important question which we must address in this regard is a lot of times we see that people who do criticize entrepreneurs per se, they would come up with that argument that we really glamorize entrepreneurship as it is. Maybe the focus should also tilt towards encouraging people to rebuild rejuvenate their current businesses to promote entrepreneurship on the other hand as well. So how do you propose can we have that optimum balance where we take that combination of building new businesses, of course promoting entrepreneurs, but at the same time also looking after people who would want to be more innovative and revamp their current businesses too?
To be honest, entrepreneurship is not a piece of cake for everyone. It's very challenging, and right now I think social media have recently have ignited this spark in a lot of youth, which is good that they actually try to take a step to be an entrepreneur and give it a shot. But most of the times it doesn't work out as well. So entrepreneurship and creates a lot of jobs, there is no doubt, but everyone can't be an entrepreneur. If everyone will be an entrepreneur, who will be doing the job, right? So I think it goes hand in hand, and not every person can be an entrepreneur, and not every entrepreneur can be a good worker at an office, right?
Yeah.
So I think it has to do a lot with their nature, a lot with their lifestyle, a lot with their mentality.
Right, Umair. On which I would want you to respond to further. So how do you all in all would respond to what he just said, that too in a more holistic way, when we are looking towards fostering, more sustainable businesses, more growth, of course, in the entrepreneurial landscape? What are the issues you feel that we do need to look at? Of course, from your educationist perspective as well.
Pakistan has about 5 million small businesses, 5.2 million as per SMEDA. Just comparing similar population, similar economy kind of state, Nigeria has 40 million small businesses. So we are far behind in terms of entrepreneurship in the local ecosystem. And the other challenge is that almost 80% of our economy, if you look at the State Bank numbers, is unbanked, which means that's informal.
Yeah.
So that needs to formalize. And that means there is something missing, either in the larger ecosystem, whether it's a policy, regulatory, or any other thing, where businesses are not encouraged to formalize. So we need to formalize businesses so that we become more banked and are documented. And once that happens, I think people will automatically figure out whether they want to, and by the way, within entrepreneurship, there are very different types of startups or initiatives. There could be very traditional businesses, or there could be very high-end tech startups who have a totally different trajectory in terms of growth. There are a lot of small businesses, but why aren't they formalizing is probably not just $1 million, but $1 billion question for the government to understand the value chain and then address that so that we can formalize it. Because I think there's a huge opportunity. And just to put another statistic here, Singapore has 5 million population and their exports is $380 billion a year without having any natural resource domestically.
Right.
So we have natural resources, we have human resources, which is talent. We have a huge population and area as well. We have deserts, we have mountains, we have water, we have plains, we have farming, everything. We just need to figure out, we haven't yet figured out the right formula or the sweet spot on how to actually bring in the right raw material like human resources and kick off our exports.
Right.
I think we just need to figure that out. There's something missing and education could be one part of it.
Right, sir. But in this regard, I think we must also talk about this entire debate in the context of climate change too, and that is something which is very important for the entire world. Now, we have seen that world over more and more, entrepreneurs, they are engaging in green startups. Is this a trend that we as Pakistanis have been keeping up with? Because I think a very important part of this entire discussion is also to ensure that, yes, we are also looking up to and keeping up with international practices when it comes to, changing our overall entrepreneurial landscape too.
Yes. In short, absolutely. There are now startups in Pakistan around clean tech, climate tech, and that part. And the NICs, the National Incubation Centers, now have a cohort, especially around this ecosystem, where they are encouraging startups around all these new cutting-edge technologies. And not only this, but I think the new term, which is very important for everyone to understand, is ESG, which is environment, sustainability, and governance. All three things are now becoming critically important. And within environment, climate tech is critically important.
I'll come towards you, Sam, and I want you to add to this, but more so from a social impact perspective. Now, we see that a lot of times, people, more particularly young people, they are very inclined to buy from companies who are doing good for the society, who are giving back to the society. But when we do talk about this from the businesses perspective, to what extent do you feel have businesses and startups in Pakistan actually prioritize, social change, social reformation, that too in their business? business goals, is it something that they then construe to be merely a luxury, or do you feel that this is something which is then inculcated into their business strategies?
Well, Fatma, I guess that CSR is playing a very pivotal role, and our corporate sector, they completely understand their this social responsibility, and they really want to pay back to the community. And from the startup point of view, our incubation centers and other organizations, they want that if you are doing and if you are getting some kind of knowledge, or your startup is setting, then you need to encourage other people. So this kind of ecosystem or this kind of chain, that will help in so many things. For incubation center, I would like to add one more thing, that recently we are working a lot on these initiatives where we can create these kind of linkages with the international market. However, there are certain kind of issues at times we feel, because from the expat, and they feel that there is a kind of political instability at times, and they don't want to invest in Pakistan. These things are also, when we look at the bigger picture of the economy of the country, these things matter. But startups and these things, they must need those kind of CSR initiatives, and the CSR initiatives are doing great job. And the first part of your question, in which you asked that do our young generation, they really believe in these things, and they really want to add their own knowledge. Maybe their way of thinking is a bit different from the orthodox style, but they create those kind of innovations.
And they are more attracted to invest and buy from businesses which are actually socially cognizant, and also to look at this matter from the business's perspective. I think it is also very good for them, not only in terms of affordability, but also in terms of perhaps their brand reputation too, because businesses who are cognizant of the surroundings and the environmental impact that they do have, I think they do go get those extra brownie points too.
Yeah, and they are more focused about the environment, and they know a lot about other things, that how Pakistan is getting affected and how we can portray our picture to the international community, that our startups are working a lot for the eco-friendly initiatives, for the alternate energy. Even our so many departments I have seen recently, they are using those kind of cotton or those kind of raw materials which are eco-friendly. So I guess that these things should be the way we discussed earlier, that they need to be regulated in a way that more people can get benefit from that, and they can get knowledge from that, because the lack of awareness at times create lot of controversies or lot of misunderstandings.
Right. Although I think it still goes back to the business own ethics and their own objectives too. I think a lot of times we also come across businesses who might be very small or who might not be making it big, but still they would be very dedicated towards, actually having that one strata of profits, which is going back to the environment. So coming towards you, I think here we must also talk about this from the social media perspective, which is extremely important. Now, a very prominent trend that we have seen in Pakistan, that too, I think in the past 5 years or so, is the fact that, we see a lot of people setting up their businesses in online spaces, and then, of course, using TikTok, using Instagram to advertise the same. But as somebody who again has worked in this sector, do you feel that this is the ideal thing to do? Because yes, it might be easy to start out with in online spaces, but what would be the long-term sustainability of such businesses? Would entrepreneurs who do set up their businesses in online spaces, would they not face challenges when it comes to overall scaling their business?
Yeah, so social media influencing has taken a very big market, and even the companies are relying on them, for their promotions. So scaling and keeping it sustainable is the question, right? So they have to be, it's very important. I think it's really good what they're doing. There's so much foreign income that is coming in through that medium, right? And apart from that, they are making a lot of money out of that as well. But as far as they're keeping things ethical, I think it's really good, and they should be doing it, and more people should be going towards it, right? As far as you're keeping it ethical. But as far as sustainability is concerned, I think it's better that they invest that money somewhere into other businesses as well, while getting the income stream from the social media. It's just like NBA players, right? Even they're making in millions, right? But they still invest in in other businesses. They start their own clothing branding, they start some restaurants. So just like that, I think, if they're making good amount of money from social media, they should be investing in some other businesses as well,
Right.
to keep it sustainable.
But if you were to look at this from another perspective, a lot of times we also come across people who complain that, they have been buying out from online businesses and they have been victims of frauds, online frauds. And then others, they say that there's too much deceptive marketing. And when you're operating in online spaces, I think the whole thing is so fluid that it's easy for people to get away with such practices. Badar sahab, how would you comment on that? Because you would have your own narrative here. I think here it's very important to also consider the role of AI, that too on entrepreneurship generally. Whereas, we do appreciate that, yes, AI would help to improve efficiency overall of the businesses. Do you not feel that it also comes with its own set of dangers?
Any technology is a double-edged sword. It's absolutely dependent on the human behind that technology, on how they use it. They can use it negatively or positively. So now there are drone wars happening around the world. We see that. And most of them are AI supported, if not completely autonomously being driven by AI. So AI is, as I see recently, and I think AI is not just another upgrade in technology. It's a complete reset. Not only for any business, but also for tech businesses. Even the tech businesses will have to change. Our software engineers will have to reprogram themselves because AI is going to change the way they do software engineering. AI is completely disrupting, and that disruption will, anyone who leapfrogs and leverages the AI technology right now, of course it has its own set of challenges and that can be addressed. There is bias, there are other challenges with AI, but we can't sit behind and not leverage that. I think we need to leverage the positive side of it. And we now have another opportunity, like we had back when we launched 2G in Pakistan. We were one of the first countries which launched GSM when the CDMA technology was there. I think we now have the technology to leverage our youth, bring them up to speed, upgrade to them, do boot camps, train them in AI for all different functions.
Right. We need to upskill the entire workforce, and also, sir, in this regard, perhaps have better, more stringent regulatory mechanisms in place as well. Because if I look at this from a legal standpoint, I think one thing which is missing is the lack of perhaps more stringent policies in the event that, there is some kind of a misrepresentation or any kind of a fraud online. I'll come towards you, Sam. Here, I think something that is very important to highlight is the fact that, Lahore has opened up its first culinary school, that too for trans individuals. And it is, interestingly, a free 6 months program for transgenders, which definitely gives them hope and dignity so as to, earn their livelihood in a respectable manner. How do you feel are initiatives like these paving that way, more particularly when it comes to having a more diverse and inclusive workforce? Yes, we are taking the more downtrodden segments of the society along with us, but would this also translate into, mainstreaming them, that too in other facets?
Yes, exactly, Fatma, and I guess that this is a very wonderful initiative because they are part of our society and we need to bring them to our mainstream economy as well. And however, I must say this thing, that there are certain recommendations and there are certain rules, there are certain legislation. However, at the end of the day, society plays a vital role. Like initially, like State Bank, they started giving loans as per the SDG 5 goals to the transgenders. But at the same time, the commercial banks were not willing to entertain transgenders because they were scared of the society backlash. But these things and these initiatives, just to make them normal and to become, to tell them that they're the part of our society and the part of our community, I guess this is very important. And that will create more peaceful and more harmony and create the less unrest in the economy.
It will overall make the workforce more inclusive, and by that yardstick, madam, I think differently able persons, they also need to be included in this as well, because it's just not women, it's also transgenders, and it's, people with different abilities too. Umair, I would want you to add to this. Now we are talking about, entrepreneurship generally. I think an angle which is often ignored is the fact that people, in the event that they are running successful businesses, or even in the event they are not, they do face a certain level of burnout. And that is something, unfortunately, that we don't talk about. That doesn't touch our conversations when we talk about entrepreneurship. Because I feel, at least, and you may beg to differ, that when it comes to setting up one's own startup and business, I think the pressures there are way more as opposed to going to a 9-to-5 secure job. So how do you propose can we go about, then combating this issue of rising mental health issues, that too in entrepreneurs?
Absolutely, Fatma. Mental health has become a really big concern, and even for the employees, even for the people who are doing 9 to 5, the companies are really focusing on improving their mental health as well. So when we're talking about startups and their founders, they are on top of the mental health issue right now, because there's so much pressure on their shoulders. There's so much pressure that they're taking day in, day out. Because when you're doing 9 to 5, you still have that peace of mind that you are working at someone else's business, right? But when you're doing your own, right, you have all the pressure that you need to take. So you have investors that you are answerable to, then you have employees, without which you can't run the business. And then, there's all sorts of drama going on for the founder, and he's the one-man show between that, right? So for that, for fixing this issue, for combating this issue, there are people, there are trainers who are the life coaches for the CEOs. I think that is something that we really should be focusing on in Pakistan as well, because on the other side, it's really common now. CEOs
Globally,
and founders,
right.
They have
and
their
you have these
trainers,
coaches even when we talk about sports, like for example cricket as well.
Absolutely.
So it's a very
Absolutely.
important part of one's
Yes.
life, and these are things that need to be construed overall. And I think
Yes.
perhaps we need to take these concerns at a policy level too, looking at this in a more broader picture. Coming towards you, Badar Sahab, and moving towards the end of the show. So all in all, to wrap up today's conversation, we have spoken about the latest trends as we do see them evolving in Pakistan's entrepreneurial landscape. But in this regard, to answer a question which is often asked is that how important is it for anybody to seek a formal education when it comes to having entrepreneurial success? How would you answer it? Probably from your own of course perspective of being a professor at LUMS. Do you feel that it's very important for us to get a proper education when it comes to pursuing entrepreneurship? Because world over we do see visionary leaders, entrepreneurs like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs doing so well and setting examples for us, and they are college dropouts to start out with. So coming back to the question, how important is a formal education for us to become a successful entrepreneur?
I think, Fatma, that's important to an extent. So we need to have the right mix of everything. You can't ignore basic education. You need reasonable education to at least be aware of what are the opportunities. And the other very important thing which we don't focus on in Pakistan is the network. When you go to a good university or a good college, you build that network.
True.
Because your net worth is your network. And that's critically important, especially when you're an entrepreneur, you want to get things done faster. That's where you are challenging the status quo. You need to have the right network. So entrepreneurs really need to go to a good school as well and understand and get basic learning, but that needs to be coupled with hands-on trainings as well, like boot camps, cutting-edge technology, because majority of our education is very theoretical and academic.
Right.
That needs to be coupled and backed up with more hands-on experience.
Right, sir. On which I'll come towards you, Sam, and moving towards the end of the show. So I think here, one thing that we must touch before we conclude today's conversation is the very importance of freelancers. Now, we do know that Pakistan has over 1.5 million freelancers, yet, unfortunately, they remain outside the entrepreneurial conversation. When it comes to giving them, due consideration, of course, space in this landscape, do you feel that perhaps we need to widen the definition so as to include perhaps digital nomads, so as to include gig workers, or for that matter, even independent consultants? And this is something that we do see happening in other parts of the world.
I completely agree with the thing, because now the situation is completely changed after not only after COVID, but also after this AI and so many other things. Our young children, they are working a lot as a freelancers, and they're making good money. So they have to channelize in a formal economy, so they can be part of our GDP, they can be part of our, when we talk about the economy. And that's why when we were discussing earlier that at times we say that this is certain percentage our women are working only in this segment because they are not part of the formal economy. So we cannot figure out what is happening at some time, at some way where they are not having their bank accounts, or they are not taking loans, or they are not in the cycle.
Women who are operating home-based businesses
Yes.
too, right? This
So-
has been a very pertinent debate for the longest time. So we need to include all these people categorically in our policies too and in our programs as well.
So true. And then women who are working from home, even their cooking channels or something like that, and they're using social media platforms to get some kind of publicity, or even their clientele is based on social media platforms. So these incomes, they are not only being channelized by the government, they should be acknowledged by the banks, they should be given their due credit because they are creating kind of jobs opportunity
Right.
as
And not
well.
only that, but in addition to that, I think the structural and the systemic barriers which then do exist for people like these, they also need to be done away with. It's just not about recognizing them and giving them due acceptance. It is also about ensuring that, yes, we do integrate them into the system. I'll come towards you, Umair, and moving towards the end of the show. So my last question to you would be, I think we've talked at length about, the national perspective on the Pakistan's entrepreneurial landscape. What is very important to talk about in this regard is the international perspective as well. Now, we do know that Pakistan is actively seeking joint ventures, that too with countries like Oman and Bahrain in various sectors and various industries like IT. But when it comes to addressing the challenges that Pakistani entrepreneurs might face, that too with regards to international expansion, how do you propose can we go about tackling the same? Because this is at the end of the day a very important issue that we do need to address.
It sure is, and unfortunately, it has been a challenging situation since a couple of last years, for the startups to thrive within the country. And but that doesn't stop them from expanding internationally, because the one that they're still functional, the one which are still operational, it's easier for them to expand to the other markets and to get fundings, because investors are still ready to invest if you're expanding to the other countries apart from Pakistan as well. And even if you are based in, I prefer to a lot of people if they start something in Saudi and register themselves over there right now, because that's a booming market right now. So then, and get the funding over there and then bring the business to Pakistan. I think still it will be a win-win situation for Pakistan as well, because they'll be more comfortable giving you the funding if you are expanding internationally.
Right, sir, your point is noted, on which note I would like to conclude today's show. Thank you so much, Badar Saab. Thank you so much, Ms. Sam. And thank you so much, Umair Saab, for your time today. Well, to conclude today's show, we generally spoke about the changing trends of entrepreneurship as they do exist in the Pakistani society. In this regard, we also stressed upon the need for there to be more diversity and definitely more inclusion in the entrepreneurial landscape, so to speak. Whereas, of course, there's no denying to the fact that we do see the Pakistani government taking not one, rather quite a few notable initiatives so as to overall boost entrepreneurship in the Pakistani society. So as to be able to better implement these initiatives, what we do need to focus upon is definitely policy revamp and appropriate and adequate investments in our infrastructure too. That's it for tonight. Until next time, take care and Allah Hafiz.